Here we are once again. Welcome to another episode of the Becca's Talking Podcast. I am the aforementioned Becca. Tom Becca, thanks for joining us every Tuesday. We have a new podcast with an interesting person and a story to tell, and today is no exception. And I will tell that story after I tell you about our fine folks there, our friends over at the Havana Garage in the Old Market. Havana Garage, as you well know, they've been around for a long time, and it's a cigar bar. But you don't have to be a cigar smoker to enjoy it. The atmosphere there, it's a friendly atmosphere. Got kind of a Rat Pack vibe going for it there with Frank and Sammy and Dean and a great selection of cocktails. Yeah, I'm a Scotch drinker. They got some nice Scotches there. But whatever you're looking for. Occasionally you'll hear music, and it's just a nice place to be. And now that the weather's getting nice, yeah, sit outside there and enjoy yourself at Havana Garage in the Old Market. And if you'd be so kind, tell them I sent you. All right, so this gentleman here, his name is Harrison Johnson. He is the Director of Economic and Community Development at Bellevue.
That's correct, yep.
And I know Harrison. Years ago, me and some friends, we we formed an organization called the Free Speech Society. When things were getting really, really tense and people were like shouting at each other instead of talking to each other, we came up with this idea of, why don't we get people on the left and the right, get them together, and just talk and have a conversation. What we found through this is people on the far right and people on the far left don't necessarily want to talk. All right, but we found another group of people there that just want to go and have discussions and listen to topics. And we've had mayoral candidates in the group. We've had experts on pretty much almost everything. And Harrison's actually spoken to our group as well, but that's how I met him through the Free Speech Society. And there's just so much going on in Bellevue right now. And I also want to talk about, your studies and your thoughts on what government should be. But before we get to that, let's talk about this, because Bellevue's in the news now. Got a big water park coming, right?
Oh, yeah. It's quite big. It's going to be one of the largest indoor water parks in the country.
Now, it's part of this whole Good Life District thing.
Yes.
Which I hear there's going to be a Good Life District, and there's not going to be a Good Life District. There isn't. What is a Good Life District, and how does Bellevue fit into all of this?
Sure. So, one of the Good Life Districts, how it all got started was the legislature passed a bill in 2023, and what their intent was to do is they were trying to incentivize development by lowering the state sales tax. So they took the 5.5% sales tax that we currently pay here in the state of Nebraska that goes to the state, and they cut it in half to 2.75%. And in the act, it allows for 5 districts to be in existence. Gretna was the first one. Rod Yates' project out there at Nebraska Crossing Outlets was the first approved.
And that was the one that said, because they had all these big plans going to happen, going to be like the World Volleyball headquarters and everything, and then that just sort of fell by the wayside, right?
Well, I don't work with Rod or that group out there. There are a lot of good folks. I work really closely with the city of Gretna. Their team. I'm hopeful that there's some success out there. Excuse me. We'll see. But I wish them the best. It's a big undertaking. It really is a tough thing for them to do. It's a tough thing for all of us, Bellevue included, to get done. So I am excited to see what happens. I really hope it goes forward for them.
Because this is a water park, but as I read the plans, it's like the 4th largest water park in the country.
That's right. So
indoor water park.
Indoor water park. Let's be clear. Yeah. So it's indoor water park. It's got it's got a retractable roof, which is one of the more unique functions. You go to the Great Wolf Lodge. It's all indoor. It's smaller, to be fair to them. To be fair to us, I guess.
So the water park in Bellevue will be smaller than the Great Wolf Lodge?
No, the water park in Bellevue is going to be much larger.
That's what I figured. Okay,
yes.
Sure.
My apologies. Yeah. So it'll be a lot larger than the Great Wolf Lodge. And in the summer and when there's good weather, the sky will be open. We'll have our opportunities to get a lot of good air in there. So
when my niece and nephew were little kids, I took them once a year down to Great Wolf Lodge, and I got to admit, it was fun. It really was cool, and the place would be packed, and that families running around, all these little rugrats, running around and that. But it was a lot of fun, and that. So what made Bellevue? Because every entertainment district has something different.
Sure.
What made Bellevue decide that the indoor water park was the way to go?
Well, it's been something that a lot of of our city leaders, Jim Risto and Mayor Heck, have been working on for a number of years. So when I joined the team in 2023, they had kind of already gotten through a lot of the process, and now it was time to apply for the Good Life District and get the project funded, which we did. We got it funded in February of 24. So that's when that kind of shifted into high gear. And the water park is really unique because what it is, a lot of sports arenas, they kind of have, you've heard of the Ralston Arena, you've seen downtown the CHI Center and stuff like that, or the TD Ameritrade Park. They're fantastic venues, but sports they're seasonal, and that can kind of create a barrier and make it a little more difficult to capture economic development because you're going to have restaurants and recreation. You want that to be all year round,
right?
And so it can be a little difficult to get events down there. We took a different approach. We said we want something year round. And we want something we can bring families to, so we're not having that seasonality type issues that we could otherwise have. So we had this idea, they had this idea, then myself and the team kind of put it into action. And so we've got 2 hotels that have signed up for it as well. So those hotels will be connected by a walkway, which is the unique part of the Good Life District, by the way. So in every Good Life District, you have to have a new-to-market retail option. And one of the big things that we were able to say is saying there is no place in Nebraska right now where you can have a full all-inclusive experience, especially when it comes to recreation, especially in the middle of January when it's negative 27 degrees outside. So you can get to your hotel, unpack in your swim trunks, walk across to the water park, and be sipping a Mai Tai on the Lazy River within all in 15 minutes. So I think we're all excited about that. The Lazy River is going to be probably the fuzzy river if you have too many of them, I think. So
okay, so now there's 2 hotels, but there's plans for more then.
There's plans for more. Those are the 2 hotels that'll start off and they'll be directly connected to the water park. We are starting the process of next week. Actually, we'll be meeting with a lot of different developers to sell off the other areas around the water park and get that area developed with other recreation options as well.
And whereas the one in Gretna is having some problems getting off the ground, you guys have already broken ground.
Yeah, we broke ground on Thursday, so we're full steam ahead from the Good Life Districts, and we're wishing the best to all of them. However, we are the first out of the gate, I think.
Okay, you said there's 5 Good Life Districts in the state.
4. There's 4. There's room for 5.
There's room for 5.
Yes.
What qualifies to be a Good Life District? Could Omaha be a Good Life District? Could Papillion? Could Ralston? I mean, what makes a Good Life District?
So the Good Life, and there is one in Omaha. Avenue 1 is Omaha's Good Life District. But in order to kind of apply for a Good Life District, basically what we have to do is you have to certify to the state that the state will have a net revenue from the sales tax. That if you're going to get a decrease in sales tax revenue to the state, you're going to bring a lot more business to the state from out of area, and of course it has to be recreation, has to be focused around tourism and stuff like that. So you had to put an application together, you had to have ground under control, and then we were working with our partners at the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. Casey Bellis is out there as the director. Fantastic team, working very closely with them. And so it's a process because it was a new law. It was a little clunky when they got it first written. It's still a little clunky now, I think. But we were able to make the best of it, and we worked with the DED team and the governor's office to make a fantastic product.
You say Avenue 1 is Omaha's.
Correct, yeah.
I'll admit, I know nothing about that. Sure. I mean, I think I might have heard it in passing at some time, and that was it.
Yeah.
What's that going to be, or do they even know what it's going to be yet?
I don't know a lot of the details of it. The voters approved the economic development program for Avenue 1 during the November election this last year. So what that allows them to do. So this is where Bellevue is unique, because what Bellevue is, it's the only city-led Good Life District in the entire state. All of these other ones are privately led, private developers who are leading it. And the economic development program approved for Avenue 1 and for Gretna and for the others as well allows the developer to then apply occupation taxes and apply a fee so that the consumer, the person who's shopping in that area, doesn't notice any difference, but actually half that money is coming back to the developer so that they can cover the costs of investment. Bellevue being unique in the fact that we are a city-led ones mean that the city is going to apply for that. So the money that consumers and visitors are paying goes directly to Bellevue's taxpayers to pay off both the infrastructure costs of the entertainment district, and then also the council would like to use the net revenue from that to give property tax relief.
A pet peeve of mine in this state is that we do nothing to promote ourselves. I mean, if you take a look, during vacation time, you'll see all these ads on TV for South Dakota. Oh, yeah. Hey, come down to Kansas City and party, that sort of thing. Our tourism budget is so small compared to our surrounding areas. With this, will there any of this money that you're generating, will any of that go to help promote people to let them know that you're even here? Or is the city of Bellevue going to be responsible for that and saying, okay, now that we've got this open, now Bellevue's got an ad budget that they have to spend?
We're definitely going to be doing a lot of promotion. We love self-promotion, and I do too, so it's a great thing for us. We're working with our partners at the county on their tourism side as well, so they've got some good folks out there that we're excited to work with and potentially find some ways for mixed funding ventures so that we can bring the county, Sarpy County's tourism dollars to bear for that as well. That's a program in the works. I mean, we're really hoping that the state kind of takes these good life districts and once they get developed, really doing a big push. And I think as you see the development of those the different districts, I think you'll see that. I think you'll see that.
And this water park will be up and running and
by the end of 26. By the end of 26.
26.
Yep.
So it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, no kidding.
It'll
right?
be here before you know it. Okay.
It doesn't feel like that. I'll tell you that. Oh man.
Oh no, I know it is weird because you hear these things. Whether it be like I remember when they announced the development of, let's say, like Midtown Crossing.
Sure.
And they say, oh, well, it's going to be available, and it sounds like so far down the road. And then next thing you know, it's like you're driving by going, hey, look, Midtown Crossing is here.
Sure.
Yeah. So it'll be here. It'll be here before you know it. I mentioned at the start of this that we met at a thing called the Free Speech Society. By the way, the Free Speech Society meets the third Saturday of every month at the Centris Federal Credit Union at 132nd and Pacific. It is like from 8:30 until 10 or so. And every month we have guest speakers, we have conversation, we try to learn stuff and have a discussion and try to, find common ground in things. It doesn't always work, but we try. I'm going to try to be kind here in that saying that most of the people that go to the Free Speech Society are old farts like me. Okay? We got that, but you're a young man going to this thing. What brought you? What made you interested in becoming a part of an organization like this?
Sure. So let me take off my job hat for a second and make a clear separation. So this is just from me personally, and from my involvement working in politics and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm from Omaha originally. I went to UNO. I was the president of the College Republicans in UNO for a short time. A bad president, by the way. I wasn't very good at my job, I don't think. And then, so I've always really been interested in politics. It's always been something that's always excited me, and I think I have a little motivation to try to shape the world around me. And so it's always been something that was interesting. So when I heard about the Free Speech Society and Rick and Joe and you guys were setting this up, I was like, this is a perfect time. This is a great time. And every time I've gone, I've had a great time. Sometimes we get yelled at, but that's good. I actually enjoy that. I was like, you got to yell at me because it feels good to get yelled at.
Well, interesting thing, because we've talked and I've seen you there, like, quite often, and you actually presented one time.
Yeah.
And until now, I didn't know that you were a Republican. Because you're not into a thing.
Well, not anymore. Not anymore.
You're not. Okay, so you've also you've left the party. I mean,
I did,
Jeremy Aspin wrote an editorial in the World Herald about why he left in that. And so, are you an independent? Are you a Democrat? What? What are you? So people want to define you. What are you?
So I would consider myself a liberal, and my ideology and my beliefs kind of switched around the first election of Donald Trump. I actually met Donald Trump a month before he announced for president when he came to the Iowa Western Community College to give a speech, and we were invited as the Republican group at the time at the university. So we went there. It was really exciting. I mean, this is a month before he announced for president, and he said his stuff. He's like China, veterans, stuff like that, and I was like, okay, whatever. This guy's a little spacey. That's fine. And then we actually wanted to get a picture of him. It was a strange. He's a tall guy, by the way. I'm 6'2". This guy's taller than I am.
Yeah.
And so he's going off stage and he's running. He's like fleeing the area. He's got some other place to be. And I run up to him and I said, "Hey, Mr. Trump, can we get a picture with you?" He just looks at me, and turns his head and then just points. He does this, just points. I didn't know what the hell that meant. Like I was like, I have no idea what that's supposed to do. So I followed him, and then he turned around, did his signature thing like that, and I'm like, oh, I got to follow suit, and I tried to do the same thing, and the rest of the college Republicans were like a little nervous, and I'm like, we got this guy flagged down, and so they came out and had that. So that was an interesting, exciting thing for me. But I found myself in real disagreement with a lot of the policies, and it forced me to re-examine sort of what my values were. And then slowly and surely, I was like, examining evidence and stuff like that, I think I might have switched parties. And so I did.
Interesting. You talked about that first time he came here, about a month before he announced, before he came down the escalator and all that. I had a chance to interview him. I interviewed him for about 10 minutes or so. Quick thing. He was the TV star then. Sure. Nobody was taking him all that seriously, but he was up at the press club, and we talked for a while. And he's a charming guy.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. He's a funny, charming. He's probably the funniest president we've ever had.
He's a charming guy. He's a charming guy, but he does like himself a lot. Yeah, I know that when we sat down in at the press club to record the interview, that he's making sure the lights are all in the right place. And then fast forward to right before the Iowa caucus, he held a press conference on his plane before the caucus, and I was able to go and be on the plane for that. And as I'm walking up the steps to the plane, he's there waiting, and he looks at me, and I get that look like, I know you. You sort of look at it. I go, Mr. Trump, my name's Tom Becca. I interviewed you the last time you were in town. And his response was, oh, that's right. You were very good to me. It wasn't, oh, good to see you. Oh, that's right. I thought you looked familiar. It wasn't anything like that, like most people would say. It was like, oh, that's right. You were good to me. Okay, you're okay to be here. You're not one of the enemy of the people.
Not yet, anyway.
I think I am now. I think
if you figured you out now, Tom, you probably would think that.
I think I am now. But so a lot of people, now you said like in college you got involved in politics and everything. A lot of young people don't.
Sure.
Why did you, or why, or why don't they, and what can get more young people involved in the process, whether it be Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, to be a part of what's going on?
Politics is interesting. I mean, there's a saying I'm fond of where basically the world is run by those who show up, and I think a lot of times when you look at politics, people feel it's very, very it's a big subject and it's hard to tackle and it's contentious. So anytime you have an opinion, you're putting yourself out there to potentially have somebody contradict you and debate you and stuff like that. So what I think a lot of times we fail to do, especially when we're educating our young people, is we fail to teach them abilities to debate in a way that doesn't become sort of an attack. I think back to a radio talk show host I used to listen to, Michael Savage, who was syndicated out of California, and I don't remember where exactly, but I used to listen to his radio program a lot back when I was a conservative. And I found that the way that he was communicating, if I tried to communicate the same way in real life, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
People, it just doesn't work like that. They don't take to it. And more importantly, when you find yourself wrong, when the evidence isn't in your favor, then you're like, oh man, like it's like all of a sudden you're like, that's embarrassing because you've given yourself no grace and you've made the other side upset.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, having worked at stations where Michael Savage was, I'm very familiar with him. But I got a problem with something that you're saying here, though.
Sure.
In that you say, when I was a conservative, now I'm a liberal. That I think we need to look at ourselves as being Americans. Personally, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? The teams, that means you're not part of my team. Whereas opposed to, we're all Americans. We're all in this together. And if we thought of ourselves more as Americans and less as liberals and conservatives and Republicans and Democrats, I think we'd be better off because we all want basically the same thing. I was able to, fortunate enough to spend part of my younger years traveling the country as a stand-up comic, and I played all over the country. And I got people from all walks of life, all different economic structures, people that were, all different races, colors, creeds, and that, north, south, east, west, northwest. And when it boils down to it, we all basically want the same thing. We want love. We want respect. We want to make a decent living. We want to be able to go to a water park with the family. We want the same things.
Sure.
And we look at ourselves like, oh, you're on the other side. Mm-hmm. When we should all be on the same side, in my humble opinion. I will get off my soapbox now since you're the guest here. But
no, I agree. I mean, I think I consider myself an American first before anything. I really, really enjoyed service is kind of something that I really like. When I joined the military right out of high school to pursue that path, and it was a great. Honestly, I had the same. I wasn't a stand-up comic. I've never been that funny, so unfortunately,
neither was I.
Well, you're funny enough to get this done, I think, Tom. And so, but I had the same experience. You're meeting everybody, right? You're putting them with all walks of life, and so it really does give you a perspective on that end. One of the things that there's really 2 points. The first one is that, I really, and this is probably where we have a disagreement. When somebody says, I'm a big fan of like the politics of unity, like we got to unify and stuff like that. Politics is a method by way, I think, we discuss ideas and determine which ideas we want. There's never been a time where I've seen somebody calls for unity, and it's not also a wolf in sheep's clothing for some other partisan discussion. And the second point, I think that where we do agree that the sort of the atomization of the media, where everybody can tailor every single possible time they have an opportunity to hear sides and things that they only hear to, it's broken down communication. And it makes it contentious, which means the only people that want to enter politics are people like you and me who want to who are comfortable on the debate stage and are comfortable confronting other people about their opinions. And if you're not, then you don't feel like you can. It becomes shouting matches and it's a generational one too. You've got my family, my friends. They are on one political side, and their parents are on the opposite, almost down the line.
Right.
So it's just it's very fascinating, but also it has a material effect on families, and it has on mine, and I'm sure on a lot of others.
Oh yeah, well, and unity might be the wrong word, but I think compromise is something that we need to be paying more attention to, because somehow compromise became a dirty word. It had to be all or nothing. And Ronald Reagan said, hey, if I get 80% of what I want, that's a win. And so maybe unity, you're right, because it's like we all got to be unified, but that means that you got to agree with me, and that's not how it works. But I think maybe compromise might be a better word than unity.
I'm not a historian, right? I don't have any professional credentials in that end. But I understand it kind of come back, at least congressionally, it came back. I mean, we didn't even have, from my understanding, you didn't even talk about blue and red until the 2000 election, right? When then the newscast cast those two Republicans as red and Democrats as blue, and then it became aligned. And then before that, you had the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who I believe what he did is he changed our tradition in Congress where instead of staying in Washington over the weekend and hanging out with all the people in your party, you would have to go back to your district. And so the times that you'd going out to the bar, you're going out to have holidays and stuff like that with other members of Congress and trying to getting to people know each other on a more basic level, that just stopped happening.
Yeah.
And so it became, and of course then you had the rise of partisan media that came right along with it. I think that both did a lot of damage.
Having been a part of that partisan media, it's true. I mean, I worked for stations that were conservative.
Sure.
And people have said to me, they said, Tom, when did you become a liberal? I haven't changed, but the definition of conservative has. When you talk about Michael Savage, a problem I had with him was that he would always talk about, the vermin are coming across the border, and we all got to speak the same language.
Right.
I agree we all need to speak the same language, but only because then we can communicate better. Then we can understand each other more. And then because if you're speaking a language I don't understand, or I'm speaking a language you don't understand, then you're suspicious of each other. And I would like to see that go away. I don't know that it's going to go away anytime soon, but I'd like to see it get back to a point where you're not suspicious of somebody that's a little bit different than you.
I mean, suspicion. When I'm having conversations with people I politically disagree with, often I find that our facts are so separate. Right? We have a conversation about COVID or the January 6th and stuff like that, and the assumption of facts we're miles apart. And so, depending on where they're at, how much they're involved in politics, what I try to do is I try to move to values. I say, okay, well, what do you want to see? What is a world do you want to see a world where everybody has to be the same religion? I mean, do you want to see a world where your main political goal is to punish the other side? And usually they say no. I've had some people that are more on the yes side, and I've had an opportunity through the free speech side and through other political process to meet people that are on a little more radical of a side, and I always find those individuals to be like the Steve Bannons of the world. Those type of people that have. I would even say Steve Bannon is more intellectually honest than any given Fox News host. Like Fox News hosts will go through this process of everything's a talking point and they're washing everything, where Steve Bannon kind of just says exactly what we're thinking in a way that scares us, but I think it's more honest.
I have to admit that when I was doing talk radio, there were days I would wake up and say, now what do I have to be outraged about today? And that's it too. You would find, and this is a thing about the media in general too, there'd be a story about some moron in Florida, and it's really always in Florida, some moron in Florida.
Or Iowa.
Hey, we have listeners in Iowa. I'm far enough away
I'm from
Florida.
Nebraska, and I'm Nebraska, and I'm only going to be and I love Iowa. I love Iowa. They're great people.
They want to come across the river to the water park.
I'll be downtown tonight if you want to beat me up, please.
The point here is I've lost my point now. Oh yeah, always some crazy person out there that has some wild liberal idea. Okay, some member of, let's say, I'll take PETA, that thinks that that dogs ought to be allowed to vote, right? And it makes the internet, it makes the news. So now all of a sudden, all liberals think that dogs ought to vote. And it makes for a great talk radio topic. It's a fun talk radio topic, but people tend to take that stuff seriously. And I used to enjoy that because it was always fun, until I realized it was actually doing some damage, and that putting that in people's minds that, that anybody that might be a little bit left of center is, wants dogs to vote.
Well, and of course, I mean, your objective oftentimes, or not a lot of times, hyper-partisan media's objective is to insulate the listener, make them feel very comfortable in their position, in my opinion, and then, of course, because it's very profitable, feed them exactly the emotion. They're feeding outrage, then catharsis. Like, here's outrage, and here's your savior, it's not amicable with reality. Yeah. Reality doesn't follow that trend line, and even if you can still have values and still participate in that. But I have found that when you have the atomization of media where people are able to find – I mean, the big thing for people my age and people younger than me as well is Facebook or YouTube Shorts and TikTok. YouTube has a ton of political content on it, and TikTok has even more. And you can find exactly what you're looking for. And more specifically, people say, well, this person on YouTube feels more authentic. They're on a talk radio show or something like that, and they feel more authentic because they're on YouTube and they're not part of the legacy media, to use that term. But the legacy media, at the very least, they certainly are sensationalist. But like yourself, in the station, and all of the local media here has editorial guidelines. They've got guidelines in which things are published. That's not the same for YouTube. That's not the same for TikTok users. They operate in a world where there is none, and in fact, they're more incentivized to go down those roads and preach things. So, for instance, as a liberal, I see things that doubt the assassination attempt, that say that was all staged and planned. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. Like, where in the world are you getting that? But then you get a lot of people that'll dogpile on it. Of course it was, staged. And I was like, God, there's no evidence for that. But they're feeding this stuff on X or on YouTube and stuff like that. And so if you're a partisan, you are getting fed things that has no editorial, there's no control over it. There's nobody checking the facts on it. And that, I think, is probably why I'm most worried about the future.
Well, I'm also concerned. I don't know that democracy can survive in the age of TikTok and YouTube, because you're right. People just get whatever they want. Same thing, like whether it be Fox News or MSNBC, people are just getting, fed what they want. And it's not necessarily about the facts as much as, the emotion. I've told this story before, I think, on the podcast about in 2020 during the election. Somebody on one of my Facebook friends, I got 5,000 friends. I know 8 of them, but one of my Facebook friends posted something that was completely bogus, right? And I wrote to the person. I said, "No, what you said isn't true." I said, "Here's the facts. Would you please take your post down?" And the guy was very nice to me. He says, "Thanks for the information, Tom, but I'm not going to take it down because I like the way this makes me feel." Yeah, I mean, they just released, erroneously in many cases, all the JFK files where they didn't redact Social Security numbers and stuff like that, which is a whole other issue.
Yeah,
whole other issue. But they released all these other files on the JFK files, on the assassination of JFK. Well, there are people out there that no matter all that information is out there and all the facts are there, and there are people out there that are never going to believe it because it doesn't fit what their perceived agenda was. Whether it be the mob did it, the CIA did it, it was Russia, Cuba,
sure.
Whatever it might be, those facts aren't going to, going to reinforce my preconceived ideas, so therefore they're not going to believe it.
Well, there's a bit of YouTube history, I guess, coming back to when you had after, and conspiracy in my understanding of it feeds a narrative that makes otherwise incomprehensible events understandable, and it assembles the world in an order where there's good and bad, and it's not a confluence of different things. Like, so after 9/11, there was a documentary called Loose Change, which was doubting the narrative and was basically saying that the 9/11 was an inside job. And the difficulty is that it was entirely wrong, right? They ended up debunking the whole thing, but what it did is it took an event. I mean, you try to figure out how it caused 9/11. It's a bureaucratic inefficiency between the intelligence agencies. It's foreign policy that goes back to the 1940s with Great Britain and the Peake-Sykes Agreement and the division of Middle East, and then the rise of radical Islam in the Middle East. And then you could trace all, but it's very complex, and it's often very scary to look at that in a complex way when it's much more simple to say it's a secret cabal of people in the government that's doing this, and you're actually on the good side, and you know the secret information. And so it's extremely attractive to believe things like that. And I think that now that we're in a space where online media, specifically alternative media, is bound by nothing. It is everything is incentivized to feed into narratives because it makes a lot of money.
And quite honestly, it's like, the facts may be boring, but the
JFK files, they're just a lot of it's just kind of boring stuff. Like,
Yeah, we talked to this person; they didn't know anything. Okay, that's but you're right, or anything else. I mean, in that regard, it's just. But if they can go and get an emotion going, then you can motivate people, and then that's what they want to do. And I know, again, from my days in talk radio, where a lot of talk radio hosts would say, "Oh, you can't trust the media, but you can trust me." Don't believe them. I'm the one that's telling you the truth. Which is very dangerous. I mean, President Trump again threw out to a New York Times story about called it the enemy of the people.
Sure.
And that's very dangerous. That's I believe that sort of conversation is dangerous because Do newspapers and TV reporters and radio, do they make mistakes? Yeah, of course they do. They're human. Yeah. But they're out there trying to get the story right. And it may not be the story that you want to hear, may not be the story that fits your agenda. But I guess what I'm asking in the long run here, as I babble on, how do we get over that, or can we get over that?
I have to think that one of the big challenges is that there isn't the effect of deeply polarized societies and the effect of a glut of misinformation. As we're entering artificial intelligence and its ability to replicate a lot of speech and do things that we've never ever thought possible before, it is kind of scary. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that this only kind of stops until we have a moment where it goes, oh, this is a bad thing that could happen. And I don't want to live that life. And I don't want to – a lot of families experience a lot of this have literally experienced, and I know some personally, who have experienced breaking apart because of politics. They stop talking to each other. They stop having Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And at some point, you're going to have to say, gosh, it really sucks not being able to go over to my sister's house or to my grandma's house or whoever because of politics. And then I have to look deeply and say, okay, do I want the media? Now, that isn't going to stop it, honestly. I don't think that that's going to stop it. I think it has to almost be legislative. I don't know what that looks like from a content standpoint. But because it's so valuable to spin narratives that are salacious, until there's a real awakening in Congress. I mean, I think there was probably a year ago, Elizabeth Warren and Ted Cruz, believe it or not, co-authored opinion piece on tech companies and some of the dangers that they pose if they're unregulated. And I think I found it broadly, both because obviously Elizabeth Warren's from the left and Ted Cruz is right. You would think they were doing anything, but broadly I agreed with a lot of the points that they were making about what kind of danger is ahead if we're not able to take a look at the tech world, which now really controls almost all media. I mean, if you talk about the number of people that are interacting on media between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because, we're on YouTube, but we're also on all of Spotify and iHeart and Apple and all of the iTunes and all that, all digital. All digital, and that's how people are getting their information now more and more. They're picking up this phone and they read a headline and they think they know what the story is.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't. And I don't know how we fix that or if we can fix that. And I'm going to ask you this question here. I'm going to ask you, as a younger person, as a young person, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future? I'll let you think about it for a second because I got to do one more ad for our friends at Havana Garage in the Old Market. Havana Garage in the Old Market where you can just go and enjoy yourself, relax, and if you maybe go into a concert out at the Holland or the CHI Center or the what's it, Steelhouse, right?
Steelhouse, yeah, it's a
yeah.
great place.
I've taken a tour of the place, but I've never gone in to see a show.
It's a great venue. Great venue.
That's what I hear.
It's a great venue. Great place to have any actually any type of event. It's a great place.
And there's been some comments that have come through there that I want to see, but I've never gone to do it. But I will go to the Steelhouse. But before I go to the Steelhouse, I'll stop at Havana Garage, or maybe after the Steelhouse, I'll stop at Havana Garage, and you should do the same thing. Havana Garage in the Old Market. Please tell them that you appreciate them sponsoring the Becca's Talking podcast. So I asked you.
Sure.
Okay, I mean I'm towards the end of my run. All I want to make sure is my Social Security is still going to be there and my Medicare is going to still be there, right? But you're got a long ways to go.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
right?
hopefully, yes.
We never know what tomorrow brings, but hopefully I've got a long way. If
yes.
I'm lucky enough to get as old as you guys, that'd be good.
You don't have to rub it in. You don't have to rub it in that I'm older. Are you optimistic?
So I'll say this for two things. I'm optimistic that people are resilient and that we are innovative and that we will find a way to get through whatever challenges we've got facing. And there are big challenges, I'll say that. I think of the local community here in Nebraska and in our Good Life area, right in the state, in the Midwest. We've got great potential. We've got a lot of people that are doing great work, strong values, strong families, and I'm optimistic that this group of people, and generally broadly as a world community, even we're going to be able to meet the challenges that come face us. However, as those challenges come, I do think it could get a little rough. There are going to be some trials, and there already have been trials. I mean, the pandemic, I think, is a big trial. I think we're enduring one now, economic and stuff like that. So I'm in the long term very optimistic. In the short term, it could be a little of a bumpy ride. It'll be a fun ride for some, but I don't know. But in the long run, I'm very optimistic that we will be better for it.
And again, as an old guy, I grew up during the 60s when JFK was assassinated, when Martin Luther King, RFK, plus you had the riots and the war and all of that. So it was a very tumultuous time back then, and we got through that. Of course, we didn't have social media, we didn't have AI, we didn't have some of these other factors that we have now that create some of these problems. But we got through that, and I think you're right. I think overall, I am optimistic as well. But I think we got a ways to go to get to that point.
One of the things that is interesting that a lot of like young people, like myself, for instance, I don't like my phone. My phone I consider somewhat of an enemy. That's always with me, unfortunately, that I keep around and I feel like it's a vital part of my life. But if you talk to a lot of young people and you ask them, like, would you prefer a life that didn't have cell phones, the smartphones? A lot of them will say yes.
Yeah.
And it's not because they like they're trying to give you a good answer. It's because it's exhausting. If you haven't been on, if you have not had the opportunity to go on a 3-hour YouTube or TikTok binge, you consider yourself lucky. One, and two, most people that I have, which is a good percentage of people today, you find yourself exhausted, angry, exhausted. You don't exactly know what it is that made you mad, but it's because this algorithm was able to feed you dopamine just consistently, and it's like, anytime you're bored or you're feeling anxious, I've got something in my pocket that's just immediately able to distract myself.
I rationalize it somewhat, okay, because I'm good at rationalizing things. I rationalize it somewhat in that, like, if I would be like, in a waiting room, in the old days I'd pick up a magazine and read it.
Sure.
Now I pick up my phone and read it. Or if I'm, just sitting at a restaurant waiting for somebody to show up or something like that, or a coffee shop. So I see that it's sort of taking the place of a newspaper or magazine. That's how I rationalize it. Having said that, you're totally right. I mean, you're totally right in that I do. I'll admit I'm addicted to my phone.
Sure.
And I don't want to be. And I'm trying to stop it, but sometimes it's just that.
It's convenient and it's comforting. It's comforting, and it's a way that I think a lot of people, to say this is that I think that we're going to have to make some decisions on the national and local scale, and there's a lot of legislation, a lot of bills being passed about cell phone usage and about trying to address it and stuff like that. And I think that might be one way forward, but we have to broadly accept, or take to a point of changing the ways that I mean, it will take in order to capture this or to defeat this. It's going to take a fundamental shift in the way that we are currently interacting with our environment. I just will.
I thoroughly agree with Governor Pillen when he says kids in school, no phones. I could not agree with him more on that.
Sure.
I think that they're in school. They need to be focusing on that and not be staring at their phones. So
I think that people are really going to enjoy that. But the threat we face is, I think it's about taking some time and recognizing this stuff. I mean, for instance, I get on those things and I find myself mad for no reason, and it's in the political content that you're seeing, you come across your feed, it's enraging, and it's designed to be enraging. And I think that when you think of it like an enemy, like this is a device that wants to capture every single possible second of your waking life. It is designed to do so. There's a team of psychologists that each one of these companies hires to make algorithms to make you want that everyone, and you just have to know that every time that you touch that phone.
One more quick anecdote about what I was doing talk radio. The same number when I was doing a show in Kansas City, the same number you would use to call in would be the same number you would use to text. And there was a time I read a text, and the text was, I read it was like, Becca, blah, 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 and sort of in that tone. That's, And 2 minutes later, I get the text with the same number saying, dude, lighten up. That was a joke. And I read it again going, Becca, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, that is kind of funny. But because the mood I was in at the time when I read that, and I was expecting that battle. I was expecting that, that argument. Mm-hmm. And so I read it in that tone. And that happens a lot with, whether it be a text or whether it be instant message on Facebook or whatever it might be. I always try to put as many emojis and LOLs or whatever that I can in there just to be able to let them know that, I'm not pissed off, I
don't know if people out there who probably send emails, if you don't have like an exclamation mark behind a lot of that stuff, you have to, it's like you're using exclamation marks and punctuation to indicate emotion. So people a period sometimes feels hostile, to people. I think it's sort of true. Like,
it was a mood I'm in when I'm reading it. Yeah. Last question. Again, going back with the age thing here. What would bring more young people into Nebraska, into Omaha, into the Bellevue area?
Sure.
What's it going to take to get people to want to live in this state? I've heard people say that some of the legislation that the unicameral's passing alienates young people, and that makes them not want to come here. But from your perspective, as somebody that's involved in politics and somebody that's also, very active in your age group, what could bring more people like you to the area?
Nebraska, unless we find some magical engineering, we're not going to find ourselves with high mountains to ski or rock climb on. I don't know if anybody really loves to go swimming in the Missouri River, So we're going to have to make our own fun. That is what we have to do. We have to focus on making things that are attractive here, and that takes concerted effort. I think of not just the stuff that we're doing in Bellevue, but I think of the downtown improvement with the Jean Leahy Mall. Transformed it. I used to live downtown 6 years ago. And it's a different place. It is a fundamentally different place. And that's the type of projects that you're going to see that do that. And as somebody who's a personal fan of the streetcar, by the way, I think the streetcar is one of that. There is a world that, car traffic. Who loves being in traffic? I don't know. Does anybody love like just driving around in Omaha streets? Just like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. No, I'm mad. People are slow. We all know about the potholes. If you're driving in front of me and you're slow, just to let you know, I've definitely said some things to you from the safety of my windshield. But that's one of the things that I think in order to do that, we have to recreate our physical infrastructure space, like we're doing obviously with the Bellevue Bay Indoor Water Park, the Good Life districts. The streetcar is a good example because I think it brings that infrastructure, allows for somebody to live a life where they're not bound in by car travel. And then if you want to, you move out to the suburbs, right? You have plenty of opportunity. You've got that ability. You've got to build that affordable housing. Housing is a big thing. So One of the things that could easily be done is relaxing zoning laws, allowing for mixed middle income, a whole bunch of development on that end, because what that does is it allows for people to get into spaces that they can afford.
I just listened to a podcast here last week, and it was from a liberal perspective who was saying...
So it was a smart one, of course.
Yeah. No, but it was basically saying we've got to stop being so uptight when it comes to things like zoning and the like. You know, I mean, obviously you want to take care of the environment, but at the same time, you got to realize, people need to get from here to there. People need affordable housing. They need some of these things. And if you're trying to protect, the snail darter or whatever it might be, you're actually, you're hurting America for that. And this is from a liberal perspective, and not
Ezra Klein on the New York Times.
Ezra Klein.
Ezra Klein. His book Abundance. I think I can't sing the praises highly enough, because it's exactly that. It's saying, what we need more of the things that are basic to us that make us happy. We know how to design good cities. We know how to design places we want to be, right? I always say this when someone's thinking about what they want to. I'm like, when you go on vacation, do you imagine yourself going to your hotel, getting in your car, driving to a strip mall, to a restaurant, and then getting back into that car and driving to an empty parking lot and going to a movie theater or recreation? Nobody goes that. Resorts are that way. European cities that everyone loves talking about, they're lovely because what they do is they're able to bring people physically out of their vehicles onto the street, interacting with each other. And I think that's just one of the things we have to just.
It is interesting. If I'm in New York or when I've been to Europe, I'll walk.
Oh, yeah.
I'll walk, a mile or more to go from here A to B.
You're happier. Your heart's healthier. Like, literally, there's studies that show that your anxiety and, those types of psychological issues can be reduced, but just walking.
On the other hand, here in Omaha, I'll drive a half a block. But that's another topic for another day. Harrison Johnson, thank you for your time, man. This is fun. This is interesting. Covered a lot of different stuff, and I can't wait to put on my Speedo and go down the lazy river with a Mai Tai.
If you grab a Speedo, Tom, we're going to put you on the slide. You'll be the first guy who'll put on it.
Yeah. That's,
we're gonna have you on it. I think we can make that happen.
Me and a Speedo is what social media was made for, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, hey, thanks again to the folks at Vanna Garage and the Old Market. Also want to remind you that to make sure you like our Facebook page. We've got a Facebook page, the Becca's Talking Facebook page. Like that, you'll see some behind-the-scenes stuff. You'll get some information about what's going on. And also you can communicate with me about maybe some guests you'd like to see on the podcast, people you think might be good to have on our podcast. But anyway, Harrison, good talking to you. I will see you at the next Free Speech Society meeting.
Yes.
By the way, there's also a Free Speech Society Facebook page. You can find out more about that there, too.
Please do.
Yeah. And till next time, take care and bye, y'all.